from Europe at the same time, NATO and Russia at the same time. But who today, as you can see, we have crossed 1 million mark in terms of refugees. We are witnessing different weapons at display in Ukraine. We are seeing a situation where the president, nobody knows where he is now. He talks on Facebook and via social media to everybody. And I think that it's a sad day for the world if you look at the current state of things. And I think that is going to redraw the map, the geopolitical map of the world for a long time to come. And the powers balances in the world are going to shift and a lot of things will happen. But it's very sad that in the 21st century, at this time, we are at this stage. For me, that's really, really unfortunate. And I think there are lessons for African countries to learn in terms of how to do your diplomatic work to ensure that your country doesn't dissolve into this kind of state.
That is very informative. And then for follow-ups. But Dr. Opoku-Amanni, you have been with the U.S. system, and the negotiations are part of your responsibility as an organization. Now, if you look at this war, the negotiations to precede didn't succeed. During the conflict, the Ukrainians and the Russians, where refugee corridor, in peaceful transit of people from the country to other do you think Ukraine and other people involved who are affected by this that need to do waste of this time before these things come up?
No. Thank you very much. It has not been fair, but it is a déjà vu. We have all
The first one is that if you watch in the Russian psychology, this is not war. Because Ukraine cannot fight Russia in a war. So that's why the Russians keep insisting that they are engaged in, they are going for a military operation. But of course, for Ukraine to fight an army so efficient, as the EU, one of the vice presidents said this evening, fighting an efficient army, the Russian army, for them is an all-out war because they need to, it's a war of survival at this point. Now, so in Russia, yes, there are tensions in Russia because then the whole international system seems to be coming after you and saying we are imposing this sanction, that sanction on you. The ordinary Russian is going to be thinking, how will we get out of this? But mind you, Russia is not a country like our own, where the citizens don't understand what national allegiance means. they are aware that countries like Libya, countries like Iran have experienced this kind of situation. North Korea has been isolated for long. They have survived. So Russia knows that they will survive. So in Russia, yes, there will be a lot of movements at the security level, at the economic level, at the social level, to think about how do we keep the nation together in this time when the purpose of the West is to use this opportunity to disintegrate Russia. So for the Russians, there are a lot of movements that will be happening at the political level. There will be meetings. I'm sure that some officers will not be sleeping for 2 hours a night because they are going to be on the phone or in a room somewhere trying to think. And the military guys are going to be thinking all over the place. And of course, you can see, when you see the Minister of Defense, Russian Minister of Defense talking, you could see that he's not been sleeping lately because you have to plan. And
is that good for him? And is that good psychologically for an effective execution of war?
For a military man, that is like a daily life. Okay. In fact, it is in these moments that you show that you have been trained to survive this. Yes, because for the soldier, for the intelligence officer, for any security guy, this is the moment where your skills, your ability to think critically and strategize comes to the table. That's where we will have to see whether there are guys in Russia who can think, who can plan. And you can see that the war is being fought on different fronts. There is, if you watch the Western media, you could see they are talking about even the internet part of it, the cyber part of it, then the economic part of it. Then we see the guns blistering at the war field. So there are a lot of thinking that are going on, and I think that for me, I pity the Ukrainians a lot, but the Russians, I mean, so far, what has Ukraine destroyed in Russia, apart from the economic sanctions? That's the issue.
Viewers, thank you very much, Doc. Viewers, you can join us on 0243-158653, 0243-158653. Your views will be needed for us to understand that we are actually interacting with you, and then your contributions may be consumed by others. That would be very helpful. And when you have questions, you can ask, because the experts are here and they're ready to serve you. Doc, Russia is not a member of NATO. And among other things, it's the potential of Ukraine joining NATO that has brought us here. However, it was a member of the Organization for the Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE. As a result of this war, they have been taken out of OSCE, which means the communication and the likelihood of miscalculation exists, because the communication, there has been truncation of communication. What does it mean for us as a UN person?
It means that once again we are emphasizing, we are de-emphasizing, I should say, we are de-emphasizing diplomacy and dialogue, and we are emphasizing big power play at the international level. And it didn't start yesterday. We should see ourselves going gradually towards it. You see, generally, we operate within a framework which is based on what we call an organizational culture. So the international system has its own culture. It has a culture that dates as far back as 1815, which did not operate well. And therefore, from 1815, after the Napoleonic Wars, we saw all sorts of different types of wars, and Europe was reshaping itself. And then finally, it culminated in the 1878 war between France and Germany. Germany got reconstituted. And then we found ourselves in the First World War. Interestingly, and I must say that a lot of commendation should be given to President Woodrow Wilson, who noticed that that culture of big power play, of dominance, of seeking to become a superpower, of forming alliances so that each alliance will be able to protect the other within alliance against another group that also seeks to protect itself within its own alliance. was what was becoming the major.
Doc, this is not to cut. That was very smart of him.
Yes.
However, if you look at the fact that he ensured that the League of Nations was formed,
yes,
and because of U.S. isolationism,
yes,
did not join
yes,
the League of Nations.
Yes.
Do you think that we still need strong powers in even when we have these organizations in place?
We need to have a certain consciousness, a certain awareness. That is the most important thing. The U.S. did not join the League of Nations, in spite of the fact that it was more or less, conceived by the Americans. But it is just that they believe that, isolationism, splendid isolationism, was much better. And that in any case, Europe was a lost case. Europe was a lost case. They've been steeped in this sort of culture of fighting each other and seeking to become a superpower, a power against each other, alliances, that America, in its splendid isolation, was doing much better. Why would you want to go and get yourself involved in this rotten situation, right? Until the Second World War, and in between, there were a lot of other things that happened. Ethiopia was attacked, Poland was attacked, sort of thing, and therefore they realized that splendid isolation, will not help. And therefore, we need to build a world culture based on. People don't like this idea, but it is true. We have two levels.
Yeah.
It's either idealism, which is human beings rising up to what they believe should have been the best for everybody, or managing your baser instincts, which means that we are rotten, we are bad, but in any case we can manage our bad situation. I believe that we've come to a situation where it is absolutely essential that we realize that we are sitting on a powder keg, that technology and demographic explosion and globalization has meant that we will be interacting with each other, and we have powerful arsenals that can destroy this world. And that is when we need to dialogue. So it is the culture of dialogue, the culture of respecting each other's security and interest, the culture of what we now put in one term, human rights for everybody. That should be developed, and not what we've seen happen since the end of the Cold War.
That is very instructive. Doc, as a follow-up with what I asked, so in this case, what if Russia wants to communicate to the West? Which platform is it going to create? Because I know that the Security Council, but what happened at the Security Council? We saw antagonism of West. Is Russia going to be open to very serious communication with the rest of the world? We know of the communication, the negotiation that is going on between Russian representatives and Ukrainian representatives. That happened on the borders of Belarus. But do you see Russia communicating with the rest of the world? Because we saw that after 9/11, when Russia really supported the West in the fight against terrorism. Are we going to see that?
Well, I think that's why I said I feel very sad for Ukraine. Because you see what is happening. If this were something happening between Russia and Ukraine, it could easily have been resolved.
Yeah.
The problem is that the thing is not happening between Russia and Ukraine. It's now, like I said, a pseudo-war between Russia and NATO. Now, here is a guy in Ukraine who has been, I don't know how to describe it, been taught to understand that you have unflinching support from the big powers in the world who can stand up to Russia. And don't worry, even Germany that used to remain neutral is now saying we will give you 2,000 Soviet-made weapons that were in our arsenal from East Germany, and so that you can drop Russian planes. So this guy is emboldened every day, and now he's asking for aeroplanes, fighter jets, to be able to enforce no-fly zone himself and all those kind of things. So you see, if you look at it from that angle, you say that it is going to be difficult. But I like one thing that the French president said. He said, I want to continue to talk to Putin. So yes, there is a corridor to talk. Okay. The Israeli prime minister is in Russia now, trying to have a conversation. The Germans have tried something, and of course, the Saudi crown prince is trying something. So if you look at it from that angle, the door is not completely closed. But I think, as my colleague said, see, there is a certain mindset of who is the big brother here, you know, because what Russia is doing is to make a statement. This is a war of national security, if you like, a conflict for national security. Ukraine is claiming our sovereignty is impeccable, it should not be touched. Russia is saying we fear that Ukraine is being militarized and can be used against us, and the world is saying Ukraine has a right to militarize itself in whatever way to come after you or anybody, those kind of things. So if you look at it from that angle, yes, it's going to be difficult, but there is always a way.
But this is a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
Ukraine's army is not something that so many African states can match up to, if you look at it conventionally.
Yes.
Now we are looking at a picture that is being painted that this is a ragtag army that is even sometimes, to some degree, you might even think that they are even inferior to the Taliban that is fighting a behemoth.
Yeah.
No, you know, I just want to get that.
Yeah.
Is the Ukrainian army that unprofessional army that is just some street fighters?
No, Ukrainian army is not that weak.
Yeah.
As I said, it was ranked as the 22nd most powerful army in the world.
Wow.
So that tells you they had together, if you look at the different aircrafts that they have, including drones, they had 285 at the beginning of the war. They have naval ships, small ones, although they are cognizant ones. But the point is that if you are dealing with a superpower, see, there is a playbook that the big powers use. So the first day, Russia made sure that we disable all air defense systems, all these naval defense, everything. So what is left for Ukraine now is the ground forces. Now these ground forces, remember, Russia has very dangerous weapons that were used to destroy military bases and the control towers where people can be and give you information. All those things have been taken out. Yes, so the question comes, if it's 22nd most powerful military, didn't they have systems to also take down Russian things? Mind you, these two countries used to coexist. In fact, until 2014, Russia was their big brother. So not even UK, France, Germany with their army, Sweden, those small has a very powerful army. They think they can fight this and fight even the Americans. So who are you, a small country by its door, saying that we will stand up to you? So yes, it's not a ragtag army. But you see, the devastation, I agree with the point you made, the devastation Russia caused the first day was what forced the president of Ukraine to say, everybody must now, every male must now enlist. There's another thing, if you watch, it seems that even the Ukrainian capacity to fight has been reduced to the extent that it seems that if you watch other reports from elsewhere, they are even importing foreign fighters now at this point in time, from as far as Syria, Iraq, those ISIS, some of the ISIS leftovers, to go there to fight for Ukrainians. So, I mean, it's not a ragtag. I mean, it's just that you are standing up to somebody too powerful.
Doc, that's a comprehensive analysis of the issue.
It's all relative.
Yes. Doc, tomorrow is Independence Day. Yeah. So maybe we'll go a little bit in Ghana's history. In 1966, when Dr. Nkrumah left Ghana, he was apparently going to Vietnam in order to mediate or talk about the war that was happening between a section of Vietnam with another section, or a section of Vietnam on one side, with another section, and the United States on another side. A small country like Ghana was going to mediate. It was a very audacious move. But unfortunately, that led to his overthrow. His absence actually led to his overthrow, among other things. Now, Doc, I want to ask, with your experience, which countries have the credibility, the leverage, and the wherewithal to negotiate between these warring factions currently?
You talked about China, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, Actually, even Turkey could have been also part of it. But you preceded your question with Ghana. I'm sure you were trying to allude to the fact that why is it that Africa, since we are basically neutral, and since we have a lot at stake, because basically we are beginning to develop and the world becoming more and more complicated for us. And you know what is happening in Russia and Ukraine, and all these embargoes are going to have serious repercussions on our economy.
Of course.
In fact, probably much more than what Russia itself is going to have. And therefore, we have a good interest in making sure that these things don't happen, and if they happen, they are managed diplomatically, and therefore we don't go to war. What should have happened earlier is what I mentioned earlier, that is the culture that you develop.
Of course.
Since Nkrumah left, I haven't seen much in Ghana that seems to want to understand the international system, the culture that is being developed, the happenings left and right, and therefore where we should position ourselves as Ghanaians, as Africans, as part of the third world, to create an enabling environment for us and enhance world peace. Because basically, we need the peace to develop. Without peace, we can't develop. We need, therefore, to be able to come up with fresh ideas about how do we build a certain conception of what the world should be and try to sell it to the outside world. If we had done that, we could have jumped on that as a springboard to offer ourselves for negotiations. As it is now, it looks as if in Africa, we're only interested in the next meal. And we are
bread and butter issues.
Bread and butter issues, and we are prepared to serve anybody who comes our way with a little farthing or one CD there or $1 there, because we are having not only tight budgets, we are unable to manage even the budgets. So it's important that in our schools, and I'm hoping that this new generation will start thinking that we need, the world is a global village and we need to be able to be part of it. And that you don't need to be a mighty and high to be able to direct it. It is your world, you need to have ideas that you can also sell, especially at the time of internet, propagate ideas that would put you in a certain position where the world will call on you whenever they are in problems because they want to listen to you.
That's so informative and instructive.
If I may say something about, because you use the word credibility, credibility makes the question a very dangerous question. Because if you look at it from that angle, then you look at Israel as in terms of credibility. You see what they are doing in Palestine, then there is a problem. They don't have the credibility.
And then you are talking about Saudi Arabia and Yemen.
Saudi Arabia and Yemen, then they don't have credibility.
You are talking about Turkey with the Kurds.
Yes, and even Turkey is part of the nations supplying weapons. To,
and a NATO member.
Supplying weapons to Ukraine. So then there is a problem, conflict of interest issue. So if we look at it from the angle of credibility, it is going to be very difficult to find a country. Then maybe we'll be talking about China or Belarus.
Even that.
Even that they have their own dynamics. Because one of the reasons China is being careful about what is happening in Russia is they have Taiwan. They have Hong Kong. You get it? So it's a similar case they also have. Because Hong Kong, Britain sees it as if it's a kind of British territory, while China thinks that it's part of China. You know, so the Russian-China dynamics exist. But yes, China can talk to Russia, and Russia may listen, because by far they remain the economic hope of Russia.
Oh, Doc, thank you very much. People have joined us from home, and we'd like to also hear from them. I'm Giddy Brown, okay? The Russians are not stopping the war because they can't allow the Ukrainians to join NATO. That will put US before their nose, and they wouldn't allow that. Hello, good evening. I'm Father Asari from MIM SHS. Please, my question is, if NATO and EU decided to join the Ukrainians, what will be the end result? I mean, the negative effect. So let's note that down, and so that we help him.
If
if NATO and EU decided to join the Ukrainians, what will be the end result? Doc, from starting from 1815, will really understand what you are really asking. It will be dangerous anyway. Okay, hello. How can someone say he loves you by giving you guns to fight your senior brother? Tell Ukraine to stop kidding and go for proper negotiation. This is from Seth. Okay. And then next time we plead with you to add where you are texting from. Nuclear weapons are now on alert. Why is UN keeping quiet? And on this, please, I want to know. Why is UN keeping quiet on this? Please, I want to know. I think that is directed at Dr. Ameni. And then that is a champion, Youngson from Spintex. Yes. Yeah, that is a nuclear weapons are now on alert. And why is UN keeping quiet on this? Yes. And then, hi, my name is Prosper from Obuasi. I think the world is being hypocritical about these matters because Americans did same in Libya and no one spoke about it. Okay. Doc, I was with you. And so let's take it from there.
Well, the question, if you can.
Yes, the first question from the one of them is that if NATO and EU decided to join Ukraine,
that will lead to the Third World War. It's going to be catastrophic because then Russia, as Putin said today, even anyone who declares a no-fly zone over Ukraine, Russia will consider that person as having joined Ukraine in the war, and they will.
Casus belli.
Within minutes, according to him, they will respond. Because if you join Ukraine, it means you want to fight Russia. Even now, somebody will say Russia is being very patient. Patient because if I'm fighting with somebody and you are supplying weapons to the person flagrantly, I could as well decide to take out your weaponry at the same time. But as Putin said before the start of this war, Russia doesn't want war. Nobody wants war. But he has been forced into it. So if Europe, NATO, which includes the US, South Korea, Japan, decide to join the Ukrainians, you have the Third World War on our hands. That's simply the case. So that's why they won't try it.
Doc, you take on that.
Yes, I think NATO has already declared that it's not going to be able to impose. It said it won't impose.
They won't do it.
A no-fly zone on it, on Ukraine. But as a matter of fact, it's even ridiculous because I think the Russians remember what a no-fly zone means when it was imposed on Libya. The only resolution that the Security Council gave was that in order to protect the Bengalis, there should be a no-flight because they were afraid that Gaddafi would go and bombard them. But we know what it became. It was used as a pretext
to destroy
the whole country and
assassinate the president.
Assassinate the president. And the result is that Libya is still
a broken country.
Wow. Right? So I think the Russians will know what it means.
And Doc, they're asking that why is the UN quiet about nuclear weapons being threatened?
Okay, the statement that Russia made about nuclear war was that they have put all their security forces on alert, including
the
nuclear. And the alert it comes in 4 stages. They were already 1, and therefore I'm sure the further this thing was that it's gone to 2. So you need to go 3 before 4. That would have been if they'd gone to 3, it would have been catastrophic. So I'm sure the Western world knows that that declaration was not anything near a nuclear war as yet. And again, one other thing that is important to note is that there has now been, I heard it yesterday or this morning, that there's been a communication system set up between Russia and the US yesterday, and it's been tested so that they can call each other should there be any mistake that was inadvertent and therefore
to avoid miscalculations. Good. Doc.
That is not to say that we are still not in crisis, and that is not belittling where we are.
Doc, are you not being diplomatic with that? We are still not in crisis?
Yes.
Okay. Just by the way. Okay. Doc is trying to say that we've not escalated yet.
Yes.
The problem has not escalated yet.
But the problem is still there.
Yeah.
You know, we are in crisis.
Yeah. They are leaving room for negotiations.
Yes.
Yeah, that's typical of him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Doc. We have Djibouti, a very small country. It has a Chinese base, it has a US base, it has a French base. The population of Djibouti, the size, is relatively inconsequential if you compare to other African states. But they have all these powers there. Ghana not long ago signed some pact, limited pact with the United States to use some of our facilities in the fight against terrorism and other things, security issues. In other countries, in the Francophone countries, we find strong French presence there. Some in Mali are protesting and all that, but largely there's that presence here. Which is to suggest that in the event of an all-out war, people may not expect that missiles will only be flying within Europe. Some countries may strategically hit certain points in Africa in order to take away certain threats, apparent threats. People shouldn't forget that. How does what is going on mean for global security, especially Africa?
Well, it means everything for global security because now every security watcher is calculating what do I do in case things degenerate. I like the point Doc came from, that we are not at the point where it will degenerate like that, and there are systems in place to ensure, because nobody is going to make any hasty decision. You see, even in a war situation, even the warlords wish that there will be some peace so that they can enjoy life. You know, life is very precious. So the Americans know that they need to survive and enjoy life. The Europeans know, everybody knows. That's why everybody is operating at the level they are operating now. The only thing is that this level is going to destroy Ukraine. It's going to draw Russia into something that may be a quagmire. That's what Europe and NATO are hoping to see if they can weaken Russia. But if you look at it in the context that you asked, what are the implications for Africa? If I am a policy maker in Africa, this is the time to return to the values of the non-aligned movement. This is the time to return to it, because you see, Ukraine's choice to get closer to Europe, to get closer to NATO, is what is resulting in this. If they have remained non-aligned, they wouldn't have seen themselves in this situation, a beautiful country melting away. So that is what I would say. But you see, sometimes some of the alliances that are formed, like you asked about Djibouti, countries have their cargo ships and very important assets moving. And they look across the world to see where they can strategically position some of their military hardware or intelligence equipment to try to protect those ships that are moving. Djibouti, by virtue of its location, seems to be one of the places everybody wants their military base to be able to monitor some of the things that are happening with piracy and all that. Ghana also seems to have been one of those countries, but we are managing it well. For now, we have the Americans. But you see, remember, the French are all over around us, who are also doing things in the French-speaking countries, Côte d'Ivoire, Togo, Benin, to ensure that the waters are safe. So there are different dynamics that lead to people negotiating military pacts too. But I agree that today, if there should be an all-out Third World War, yes, some African countries have positioned themselves in such a way that they will not be spared. They may not be spared, but largely, I promise you, if it happens, we are going to see it more in the US and Europe, because Russia has nuclear weapons that can travel 11,000 kilometers. That means that they can practically get to any country in the world, can hit any country in the world. So, but I'm not sure that Russia is going to try to hit Ghana because we have a US something here. They will be interested in hitting US itself. They will be interested in hitting Europe because that's where the power can come from and affect them. It's not like the First World War, Second World War, when the kill capacity wasn't developed. When I say kill capacity, I'm referring to the weaponry. Advanced weapons didn't exist in those times, but now they exist, and Russia is not going to waste it blasting Ghana. They are going to use it to blast UK, France, Germany, Japan, those places. That's where they will say. And America will not waste it in Africa. They will waste it in those areas where it can hurt more. Okay. So that is how it will look like.
Doc, in all this, do you think that the UN system, after 45, we all know the victors of the Second World War became the permanent, Security Council members. And so over the time, they have used their veto power to outdo each other and have their way around. But currently, two veto powers are at each other's neck, even though it is not so direct. It is more of a proxy as we stand. Do you think that the UN system can be eventually affected by what is happening?
Yes and no. This is quite a difficult question. It is difficult because, you know, when you set up any organization, you set it up on the basis of a certain belief and a certain understanding of what the issues that you want to deal with are. When the UN was set up, it was based on the understanding that we're going to maintain collective security for everybody. And that the powers that existed and that demonstrated a capacity were going to form what you call the Security Council, those that have veto powers. And therefore we work towards, not just saying that we're providing security, but provide the wherewithal so that the security will be maintained. And that came with the veto. Unfortunately, immediately after came the Cold War. And therefore the division East and West. And therefore we reverted to the old block system where you now are having alliances, and the alliances were opposed to each other. Thank God it ended in the late 90s. And therefore, in the early 90s. And therefore, we could have a new start. Towards the end of the 20th century, that is 1990 to 2000, there was a lot of effervescence, ideas about where we should be going. And if you know 2000, we started this Millennium Objectives, and therefore the social part of it, and therefore the commitment that the rich countries were giving, were making, to us about cancelling our debts, about making money available so that we can grow out of poverty, about securing the world. And as I told you earlier, even early as 2000, when the Soviet Union had become dismantled and Germany had reunited, there was all this effervescence of optimism. And that we thought there was going to be peace. Where did it all go? Where did it all go, and for what reason? Unless we return to the optimism and the humanism that underpinned this development, we will not be able to edify the UN. The UN operates because the people who are the major stakeholders want it to operate well. Then it will operate well. But if the major powers decide that what they are interested in is either a unipolar world, that is, I am alone the biggest power, and that misfires, and therefore we have a multipolar system, and the polarists don't want it, and the multipolarists don't want it, the UN is handicapped and is hobbled and is not going to be able to do anything. We need to be able to pool our ideas together and understand that the world has become smaller. Global village is really a village, and that it's not only the weather, it's not only food, agriculture, it's also, at least fundamentally, it is peace. and access to resources that will allow everybody to live in prosperity, which is possible. It's humanly possible if we set our mind and our souls to it. As it was proven in the year 2000 when we all signed up to Millennium Objective. What happened? There was a little crisis in Europe, and then funding stopped. Right? That mindset of the guns who say me alone seems to bedevil all human ventures, and especially so since the Second World War. And again, since the 1990s. We should move away from it and be able to take a second look at ourselves and work for our collective interests instead of individual interests.
Thank you very much, sir. That was deep. We are being joined by our viewers once again, and they have some contributions and questions for us. They are enjoying the answers, so they are asking more questions. Good evening. My name is Laminu Kubu from Asimfosu. You are closer to my hometown. Why is the media not condemning Israel's invasion of Palestine? Doc, that is your purview. But let me move on so that we come back. And good evening. What will the West lose if they allow Ukraine to be neutral? And what would Ukraine lose if they remain neutral? This is Eben from Bremen Sikuma. Dr. Jalmensa says you will take that one. And then I think President Volodymyr Zelensky is allowing himself to be pushed deep into this war by the West, thereby endangering the lives of his citizens. Amadou Soglo from Timbila. Okay, thank you very much, Amadou. And then this is Muhammad from Navrongo. Good evening, Muhammad. Please, could I be educated a little bit why Russians know that the Ukrainian cannot withstand them, but they still went ahead to attack them? Okay, I think that I'll leave it for resource persons. And then the notion that two neighboring adversaries with nuclear weapons cannot live in peace without a neutral buffer state between them is quite an archaic and over-exaggerated threat. It is not an existential threat that Russia is claiming it is. Both sides have nuclear weapons. They have nuclear weapons that would ensure mutual destruction if deployed. Therefore, it would be suicidal and irrational for NATO or Russia to use nuclear weapons against each other. That is mad, mutually assured destruction. That's what he's talking about. And then, thanks. My name is Bismarck Sapon from Mpas in Prayeso, Kumasi. No, in Prayeso, Kwewu. Sorry, Kwewu. I personally think the end is now. which end? Which end is that? Cosmic end or okay? Where there is going to be two war fronts: communist Russia against capitalism, Americans and NATO. No, is Russia still communist?
It's not communist.
Anyway, let's continue. We'll leave it. They'll explain that. I am Agbozo. Ukraine cannot join NATO because it is part of Russian territory. Wow. Global security in Africa would be in danger for us. We know better and stronger military. We don't have better and stronger military hardware to protect ourselves. Okay, that's an advice. The notion that that's okay. So the other that I read about mutually assured destruction was by Michael Bowman. He is a geopolitical strategist. Yeah, I think he repeated the question. The statement. Good evening. Please, what Russia is doing is not the best. That is Joyce. That is Joyce. And then, please, I'm Kobe Vanity from Kumasi. What really sparked the war? Okay, that's a very simple question. And then, please, the issue of Russia and Ukraine is a lesson to African leaders that they should please make it clear so that we can read. That they should change their mode of ruling, and try to equip their armies with weapons and indulging in politics with recruitment. Okay, maybe we'll come back to that. Hi, good evening. I'm Asari Eric, watching from Kumasi. Please, my question is Putin at fault in going to war? And why is America and the other powerful countries not intervening? I think that's a very legitimate question. Good evening, please. My question is, can the UN headquarters be relocated to a neutral country? Because the US and its so-called Western allies are misbehaving too much. I learned the US just deported some UN Russian diplomats. That is Edward Nette. Okay. Thank you, Edward. Good evening, please. My question is, can the UN headquarters be... Okay. That's a repetition. Okay. A D from Amelioli. Okay. So we have a couple of questions here, and I was with Dr. Pukwameni. Doc, one of them asked about the UN, that can the headquarters be relocated, and because they feel that it's not in a neutral zone.
The UN headquarters is in New York. It's not in Washington, and it is on the land given by Rockefeller as a gift, including the whole building that was put up. And in a way, the U.S. has ceded some, its sovereignty more or less to the UN, and therefore, even people who they would not allow, and I know a case where a diplomat or even, let's say, a major politician, a government leader, could be allowed to go to New York, but can't go. They won't give the person a visa to go to Washington. And there have been cases like that. So
they even hosted Fidel Castro.
Yes. So basically, New York is a neutral zone, if you like. Where the UN is a neutral zone, and therefore there are all sorts of agreements that allow us to allow them to get there. So that should.
Yes and no. He's at fault because he has declared an operation there. But those who will say he's not at fault will say, like somebody said, I read a joke on WhatsApp today that somebody said, what is Russia's business when if Ukraine joins NATO?
And so Mohammed from Navrongo also asked that if they know that Ukraine cannot match up to them, why did they go there?
Yeah, well, yeah, so I'll answer this one with a joke from a different angle. And the person said, the wife said, what is Russia's business if Ukraine joins NATO? The man didn't say anything. He just went to the kitchen, got a knife, and came to sleep on the bed with the knife beside him. And the wife was like, are you crazy? Why are you, today of all days, why have you brought knife here? And he said, well, it's none of your business.
That's interesting.
That's how it is. That if you say, if myself and you are in conflict, we know that if we clash, we can fight. And so he is the mediator between us. And suddenly the mediator is taking sides with you. Then it means I have to be very careful. I'm no longer seeing him as a mediator. I'm seeing him as a veritable threat to myself. And so if you watch Putin, he's saying we are going to demilitarize Ukraine. We are going to stop the Nazi thing. And if you read about the Azov militia, you know why Russia is talking about the Nazi thing. If you see how weapons are being supplied to Ukraine, you know why Putin is saying we want to demilitarize Ukraine. If you see how the 6-year-old children are taken to military camps and trained to hold weapons and all that, you understand what he's saying. So the answer is a yes and a no. Somebody said Ukraine will not be an existential threat to Russia. That's the analogy I gave still stands in that case. So, but we need to understand that, as we said from the beginning, this is something that has to do with national security. And when it comes to the question of national security, there are different interpretations to it. And every nation reads it differently, and they will act to protect their interests, their values. And you cannot begrudge any nation. You can only also calculate yours relative to it. And as I keep saying, Ukraine badly calculated. And I don't know, but it's something.
Doc, let me just add this, because the question is quite interesting. He says, why is America or
the West,
West not intervening? In fact, they are. They are not intervening directly, but they are.
They are involved.
They are involved. It's clear. when they start saying
That's
we're sending weapons, we're sending this, we're putting you under this, we're putting you under all that, they are getting involved. They are intervening, except that they are not militarily intervening. But they are. Otherwise, they've made their position clear.
But Doc, there was another question.
Yes.
Why is Israel not being condemned for occupying Palestine? But this has become an issue. Someone asked.
Israel has created one military.
So far, this question has been very pervasive on social media.
Okay.
Today, I found an answer.
Yes.
That they are suffering from.
They developed condemnation fatigue.
Wow.
They've been condemned by I don't know how many. They've been condemned by everybody. But the thing is that they have powerful backers, and these backers decide to talk to Israel, and Israel is obstinate and will not listen to them. And they have powerful, what do you call it, interest groups in all those countries, the conscience of the West. What has happened to the Jews is always, played up, and therefore people are careful not to. If you support the Arabs too much, you are accused of anti-Semitism. And all sorts of things. But they have been condemned roundly. They've been condemned.
Just to add something more, just early this year, Amnesty International produced a report that calls what Israel is doing as an apartheid. That Israel is operating an apartheid regime in the Palestinian territory. So it is being condemned.
And it confirms the book is not apartheid. A very interesting book. If you see it, read it. It's obvious what they're doing is apartheid. It's condemnable, and it's been condemned.
Okay. There's another message. Hello, good evening, sir. Mabna will be watching you live. Thank you, Mabna, for being a loyal follower. We are coming drawing the curtains, and I will start with Doc Vincent Ajala-Mensah. Doc, what's the way forward?
The way forward is complicated.
Because it's still, the fight is still...
Yes, the way forward is complicated. One, we have to think about the refugee crisis and how it can be managed, because that will also create its own humanitarian problems. Talk about the humanitarian corridor that is created for refugees to move to where? 40 million population. Look at the population of countries in Europe. That's one. So that has to be dealt with. The second one is diplomacy will have to have its way. What Russia is doing now is to put a stranglehold on the Ukrainian political power and the military power to give up, and that is leading to huge problems for the country and its military and the availability of resources. I think that the dangerous thing we all want to avoid is a mistake that may lead to a third world war, and we hope that we don't get there. So,
all right, God forbid. Doc?
Listen, my view is this. The war, now that Russia has decided that it will not lose, and it will put all the resources available to be able to win. The war will continue until Russia wins. Two, that all these sanctions and the war and all that will certainly affect also Russia in terms of its socio-economic and all that, not as, devastatingly as people think, but it will affect it. And to some extent, that is what also, in my opinion, the West wants. They want to see Russia weakened. But in the long run, what worries all of us is that Ukraine will suffer catastrophically, and that it is in their interest to do what everybody consider necessary within the limits of their sovereignty, the respect of their sovereignty, to make sure that there is an understanding and good neighborliness between them and their big brother.
Excellent. Thank you so much, gentlemen. You see from Obuasi, and we see you. Awal from Tamale, Muhammad A. Sadiq from Tamale, we see all of you. But today we are behind time. We can't read all the messages. We wish that we meet you same time next week so that we can read and then with your questions so that our resource persons can answer Today, I was with Dr. Vincent Ajali-Mensah. He's on my far left. He's a security expert and human rights activist, and also a lecturer with the University of Education, Winneba. I was also with Dr. Kinslopoku Amani. He is a former UN senior officer, and then he served in many African countries and the UN system in general. He has always been with us, with Dr. Vincent Ajali-Mensah. We hope that next week we'll meet another group so that we engage you and see maybe the ramification of what is happening on Africa specifically. Thank you very much. The name is Fidel Amachi Osu. Meet you same time next week.